Thank you for making me.
We've been talking about this for a long time.
They had spent the week at my in-laws, and so they were coming back. Let's just say they had forgotten how things happened. They were a little bit more open.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome to the joint work session with the Albany City Council and the Benton County Board of Commissioners. This Tuesday, June 27th at 3:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we have a roll call, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Alex Johnson II.
Here.
Councilors Newton,
Present.
Novak,
Here.
Montague, Copson,
Here.
McGee,
Present.
and Smith.
Here.
Commissioners Malone, Ogerel,
Here.
Wise.
Thank you very much for joining us
Here.
this evening. Did I miss somebody?
Sorry, just
Good,
trying to
okay.
figure out the microphone. I think I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome the Benton County Commissioners to this joint session today. It's the first time in a while that we've done this. I'm excited about it. I think our relationship and the common goal, common interests over in North Albany are really important to everyone on the dais. And I think that this is a good start to a great relationship. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda, we'll have road transfer agreements with Director Bailey of our Public Works Department and Corvallis Albany. We'll wait on that when we get there. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one
Chris,
second.
if I could suggest to the mayor that he ask for introductions perhaps first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
and,
Thank you very much. That's why I like him. So would the staff would please introduce themselves, starting on this side? We'll go this way.
Mark Hardy, please.
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
I'm Chris Bailey. I'm the Albany Public Works Director.
And Gary Stockoff, I'm the Benton County Public Works Director.
Thank you very much.
And Mayor Suzanne Hoffman is on the other side as interim county administrator, and I'm Peter Trotzen.
Good to meet you. Good to meet you. Okay, road transfers director?
Sure. As soon as I figure this out. Nope. Here I go again.
Let me bring him up. Let's stay here. There we go.
Okay. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to give an overview of road transfer agreements, which is one of the ways that, at least in the Public Works Department, the two entities work together a lot, is on road issues. So there's a little bit of emphasis on that in this presentation. Okay, so just provide a short history of the agreements that we've had between the city and the county, and then the status of the current agreement and where we're going to go next. As a general overview, and this might be quite basic for most of you, but just for anyone listening, sometimes it's not clear, but there are roads within the city limits that are not the city's jurisdiction. So we have roads within Albany that are the responsibility of Benton County, Lynn County, and ODOT. And having more than one jurisdiction responsible for your road infrastructure can be a little bit problematic. So citizens are often confused when they call for help with a problem with a road, that they might get frustrated because they get passed from agency to agency because we can't do work on county roads and vice versa. It also complicates development review and development projects. For instance, if you think about a new subdivision that might need to construct a road to enter into their neighborhood, within the city of Albany, we have land use review, but the road connection is really might be Benton County's responsibility. Driveway permits are another sort of smaller example of that. So it just complicates things, it slows down processes, and creates inefficiencies. Another example would be maintenance work, where you might try to bundle certain maintenance projects on roads, but where the road jurisdiction changes from location to location, you can't necessarily get a contractor to do the work in the most efficient way possible. So it's just a complicated thing. It requires us to work with each other quite often. Over time, we've managed this through letters of understanding and intergovernmental agreements, which have worked really well between the city and the county. Okay, so our current road transfer intergovernmental agreement is from 2015. County roads are often transferred to the city's jurisdiction, but it's not a simple process, and it's not something that we enter into lightly, because all of those roads come with maintenance responsibilities and other work that makes the processes well thought out and orderly. We have road transfer agreements with both Lynn and Benton counties, and it defines the process and the conditions under which the city will accept the transfer of the jurisdiction of the road, and what the counties would have to do to get the road to a condition where the city might accept it. Our current Benton County agreement was signed in 2015, and that IGA had very specified improvements for a subset of the Benton County roads, after which the city agreed to accept the jurisdiction of the roads. So here's a map from that agreement, and the roads that are shown in bold lines here are at the time, all of the Benton County roads within Albany city limits. Each of these, several of these roads had certain specified improvements that we agreed upon with the county that they would perform, and then the city would accept jurisdiction. So this is sort of a messy slide, but under the IGA, on the left hand are the list of roads or road segments that have already been transferred to Albany. And then on the right-hand side are the roads or segments of road that remain Benton County roads within Albany city limits. Gibson Hill Road is asterisked, and it's in both columns because the work that we agreed upon with that needed to be done on Gibson Hill has been done. It was a significant project that the county took on, and it will be transferred later this year once the one-year warranty period is done. So it's almost the city's, but not quite. So here's a map that shows the current status, and I have handouts if anyone would like a handout instead of this map on the screen. Okay, hang on, I'll just send these around. Sorry, I should have done that earlier. So on this map, the road segments that are shown in bold are transferred already. And then there are some road segments that are a thicker gray, and those are the Benton County roads that remain. So for instance, Robin Hood, Squire, the northern part of Crocker, North Albany Road, East Thornton Lake, those have all been improved and transferred to the city. The roads that remain, the main roads that remain are most of Valley View, the westerly portion of Valley View, the southern portion of Crocker, all of Spring Hill, West Thornton Lake, Quarry Drive, and then Scenic, and then portions of North and South Niebergall are the main roads that remain. Any questions on the road segments? Okay, so there's no specific schedule for the jurisdictional transfer for the remaining county roads that are in the IGA, but it does specify the conditions under which the city would consider accepting jurisdiction. And those include if the county brings the road to the current City of Albany urban road standard. What that means generally, a complete urban road is travel lanes of appropriate width, bike lanes, sidewalks, and appropriate stormwater infrastructure. Most of these roads that are still county roads are slightly narrow, may not necessarily have the bike lanes, and they typically have ditched infrastructure for stormwater. So on the bigger roads like Crocker, that type of work is quite expensive and extensive. So, but that would be one way under which the city would accept jurisdiction. Alternately, the county and city could agree to improve a road to a standard that's something less than the full urban standard, but which would be acceptable to the city. So an example of that is on some of the roads we've already accepted, such as Squire and Robin Hood. Those are very low volume local streets, and we didn't require the installation of piped storm infrastructure and sidewalk connections because there wasn't really a need for that, and the roads are functioning really well the way they are. We did require some surface treatments to reduce the maintenance load that the city would take on, but didn't require the full construction of all of the infrastructure. Oftentimes on these smaller local streets, there's not adequate right-of-way, not adequate space to build all of that, and there really isn't a need. You might have a sidewalk segment to nowhere on some of these sort of disconnected former county roads. We make those decisions on a case-by-case basis, and keeping in mind the plan development for the rest of that area and the city as it goes. We don't want to create islands without sidewalks, but we also don't want to create infrastructure where there's no need that we would then have to maintain and for no good purpose. The third way for the city to consider jurisdiction is if the county would pay the city the net 20-year present value of the anticipated maintenance for that road. So let's say a road is in fair condition, we can forecast the type of maintenance that would be needed for that road and what it's worth over the next 20 years. And the county essentially writes us a check and we take responsibility for the road. That's pretty unusual, but it is an option. Any of those, if any of those processes start, then we work together between the two jurisdictions to figure out the best path forward. And that would, of course, go to both bodies to consider for a jurisdictional transfer. There's no plan to transfer any of these remaining Benton County roads that I'm aware of in the future. And typically these things come up as development happens or changes in the community happen that would drive that need. Probably the largest questions hanging out there are what to do about the remaining southern, about 2/3 of Crocker, which does tend to function more like a city street. It's a main road in North Albany. Some of the concerns with Crocker have been addressed by the installation of the traffic signal at Crocker and Gibson Hill. That helped a lot with congestion and queuing. But for instance, a large portion of that road doesn't have sidewalks. So that might be something that we might discuss in the future. The other major road, Quarry, is a fairly busy road. And then, of course, we have Spring Hill and Scenic. In the past, the county has expressed interest in maintaining jurisdiction of Spring Hill and Scenic because they do function as sort of farm to city type roads. There's quite a bit of freight, agricultural goods, et cetera, that moves down those roads. So we haven't even begun discussing those streets at this point. And that's essentially it. So the IGA remains, so any future road jurisdiction discussions would happen under the terms of the IGA. As it stands right now, I would say we have an excellent working relationship and we have really open lines of communication. So as issues come up, our staffs work together and to address. As far as I know, and Gary can correct me, there's no pressing issues on road transfers or jurisdiction in the near future. And with that, unless Gary has some answer any questions.
So commission, council, any questions? Hearing none?
What exactly was the status of Crocker? Because I know I've had constituents reach out to me about the no sidewalk thing on Crocker. So could you clarify? Sorry, I'm trying to soak this all in at once.
Sure. So portions of Crocker do have sidewalks. So for instance, on the northern end where a new subdivision went in, they're required to put in sidewalk. But then on the southern end where the adjacent development happened years and years ago, some of it before it was even part of the city, they weren't required to install sidewalks. So the sidewalks sort of end, and then there's just a shoulder for the rest of the road. What we've done in the past, years ago, prior to the reconstruction of Gibson Hill, the city worked with the county to apply for grant funding to do some sidewalk infill construction along Gibson Hill. And it's a little bit of a challenge because we may not have the full width that we need, but there may be portions where we could improve that and add sidewalks. So we track the complaints and issues, and then we work together to identify sources of funding and if there's a way to get that infrastructure built.
Yeah, I'd follow up with what Chris has said, and it is difficult to do these infills because they are narrow right-of-way. So a lot of times to do it the right way, we'd have to acquire extra property. Drainage becomes a real issue, and how we address the drainage and filling in the ditches and weaving things around there. So at this point, we've not really investigated anything on the southern part of Crocker. We're just trying to get Gibson Hill done
I hear you.
and ready to go.
Any other questions, council, commission? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director. Next up is Corvallis Albany Path, Director Gary Stockhoff.
And Gary, you're going to need to pull that mic much closer to your mouth.
This is that right here, right? This is one?
Chris, yeah, that map is the entire route as sort of proposed for the Corvallis Albany Path. And I believe what was asked is an update on kind of where we're at with all the different segments. So starting on the North Albany side, I got here about 5 years ago with the county, and the very northern segment was just getting underway. ODOT was running that project, and we had a route identified. We had the funding identified. What we didn't have was a permit from the railroad to cross underneath the railroad at some location. And we thought we had it, and pun intended, we got derailed. And basically, at that point, the railroad said, you're not going to use this trestle. We're not going to allow you to go under the tracks. And so we had to step back and try to come up with another plan. At this point in time, our county engineer, Laura Byer, has worked with ODOT, and I think we've got a route to Rainbow or Rainwater, something, part of Rainwater, thank you. And that one is back underway. ODOT is picking that back up. We're trying to get that segment ready to go and delivered. From there to Scenic is the next segment that we would like to take on, but we'd have to figure out a way to get across the railroad and probably across the highway. The middle segment from Scenic down to basically Merloy at the north end of Corvallis is the segment that's going to be the most difficult. We've applied and have heard we've received some grants to do some of the planning for that, or we hope to, and that will be the most expensive section and the most complicated, both acquiring the property that we need, getting over the highway, getting over the railroad, everything that we need to do to get the path on that middle section. One of the positive things is that with the new intersection improvements at Independence and Granger, ODOT did acquire the right-of-way we need to put the path in. So when we get to that point, at least we have that right-of-way and we'll be able to work around that. The last segment is the segment from Merloy to Pilkington, that area, the very southern section. If you've been that way now, ODOT is actually widening the road there to 3 lanes. And we will have a companion project right when they're wrapping up to put the path on the, I'll say, the east side of the highway. We're in the process of getting the property acquired for that, and we would hope that it would be under construction early next year or thereabouts when ODOT is wrapping up their widening project. So that's kind of where we're at with the Corvallis-Albany path. A lot of work still lies ahead of us, but we're finally getting some movement on that very northern segment in North Albany, and then we're doing the very southern segment. And in the middle, we're just trying to find money and ways to at least get the design done. We feel if we can get the route finalized and the design finished with a set of plans that we can go out with, that makes the project more enticing to other grant agencies, whether it's federal or state, to award it for construction. So that's kind of where we're moving on that one. So with that, I would answer any questions you might have on the path.
Council, Commission, any questions? Councilor Kopsinski?
Yes, and I'm inferring that you're indicating that as long as if we have a lot of collaboration, that makes it more palatable for these other agencies to want to help along the way.
Oh, yeah.
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 Thank you.
And again, kind of echoing something Chris mentioned on the last one, we have a great working relationship. We've had a couple items over the last few years that we've been able to work together on, and we conquered them, right? Sure. Yeah, we did. So I have great confidence that we keep working together. We can, and with our elected officials and state representatives, we can get the money to get it at least designed and then work from there.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Pat Malone, County Commissioner for Benton County, the chair, to the dais. Do you have a question, or would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, just wanted to, and if you've already touched on it, pardon me, but funding, is it correct we have funding on the Corvallis into the path and Albany into the path, and we're have a grant application, carbon reduction grant for the middle design on the middle section.
Correct.
Okay. So, and I guess it is the funding that we have secured on the either end. Do you anticipate that to be adequate to get the job done?
Yes.
That's the right answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Council,
Mayor,
any other questions?
I
Director
can
Bailey?
just expand on that just for the Albany Council's sake, since a lot of new faces, so may not remember or be aware, but we have budgeted in the transportation fund for this section of this path for years. And probably, the way costs have gone up, we might need to look at the anticipated cost, but it's our intention, and we have adequate funds to pay for our section, and are just waiting for, really, I think, right-of-way acquisition and all of that hard stuff to get done so that we could build our section of the path. But we've been committed to that for years.
Thank you, Director. Any other council commissioner have anything? Thank you very much, both of you. Potential funding for alternate fuel infrastructure, especially along Highway 20. Director Bailey.
Okay, I have to try this again. Here we go. Okay. So this is more of an informational item, and just to gauge the interest of both the council and the Board of Commissioners for this funding opportunity. So I'm just going to give a brief overview, and I'll start by saying I don't really have very many answers. So if you have questions, I'm happy to write them down and try to find the answers. So the federal government, as part of the infrastructure investments, created the charging and fueling infrastructure grant program. It's through the Federal Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration. There are two parts to the grant program. So there are formula funds, which assigns funding amounts to each state. And then there's a discretionary grant program. The discretionary grant program is targeted to have $2.5 billion available over the next 5 years. Because of the delays of getting all of the administrative structure set up, they've combined fiscal year 22 and 23 and made $700 million available in federal grants for those 2 years. The alternate definition of alternate fuels for this grant program includes electric, hydrogen, propane, and natural gas fueling infrastructure, but I'm mostly going to focus on EV because that's what we're most interested in and targeting right now. So in this discretionary grant program, there are two subcategories, community and corridor programs. Community projects can have grant awards between $500,000 and $15 million, and they're intended to put infrastructure on any public road or publicly accessible location, such as a parking lot or other type of publicly accessible spot. And it's intended to fill gaps or expand publicly accessible alternate fuel infrastructure within communities. Albany submitted a grant application under this program to install some EV infrastructure around town. And I'll just tell you, we don't really know. We do not have it figured out, but nobody else does either. And so we thought that because the funding bucket is relatively large this year and everybody's kind of in the same position, we would take our shot and see if we could get grant funding to both design and install this infrastructure, because nobody else knows what they're doing either, really. The other category of project is corridor program projects. These grant awards can be much larger. They start at $1 million and there's no maximum cap. They have to be along a designated alternate fuel corridor and again, publicly accessible. And in this program, you have to have a private partner, which I'll go into more in just a second. The state of Oregon put together their National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan in July of 2022. And this plan essentially describes how they intend to add and develop EV infrastructure throughout the state. And it lists years of targeted investment based on the alternate fuel corridors that are identified by the federal government. So the key thing on this map that I wanted to point out is the identification of the alternate fuel corridors in Oregon. So they are I-5 and Highway 97, which are targeted for the first year, I-84 and Highway 20, which are targeted for the second year, Highway 26 and Highway 101, which are in the third year, and then Highway 95 and State Route 42, which are in the fourth year. And you may note that I-5 and Highway 20 are both in there, and they happen to intersect right here in Albany. So that is potentially very advantageous for us. So here's a screenshot from the Federal Highway Administration map, which identifies Highway 20 as a federal alternate fuel corridor in the pending category, which means that it needs additional infrastructure investment at appropriate spacing before it can be considered a ready fuel corridor. So I-5 is considered ready in the EV category because there's, by the federal definition, at least the appropriate number and spacing of EV chargers along the corridor. So the corridor program is really intended to make these primary routes usable for alternate fuel vehicles, whether it's EV, hydrogen, compressed natural gas, et cetera. They want to install the infrastructure to make it easy and accessible for people to move around the country using non-carbon-based fuels. So Because of the geography and the way Highway 20 is identified as a pending project, it creates some potential for there to be a regional project in our area. The Federal Highway Administration prefers larger, more regional projects, and it makes sense from an administration standpoint because if you can administer one grant that covers 3 counties, that's a whole lot better than 12 grants covering all the different jurisdictions that might be within those counties. Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties present an opportunity for a regional corridor project that could be designed and submitted to the federal government along Highway 20. And again, a reminder about the corridor projects, they started a $1 million grant award with no maximum, and these grants are 80-20 local match, except in the corridor program case, you're required to have a private partner, and the private partner is required to pay the 20% local match. So there's no local funding that goes into these projects, which is unusual. So the private entity assumes the responsibility for the local match, and they might, you might ask, what's in it for them? Well, it's our understanding that they would manage the revenue generation of the chargers. So when you use an electric vehicle charger, the user pays for that electricity, and there's some profit to be made there by whoever it is that's providing that charging station. And so this is one place where we don't really have a lot of the answers, but it appears that the way these things work is there's an agreement between the local entity and the private entity on cost sharing and revenue sharing for that infrastructure. Other considerations is that the infrastructure has to be as close as possible to the corridor, but no more than 1 mile away, and that you have to provide a maintenance and operation agreement for the first 5 years. One of the common critiques is that these chargers don't work, and the federal government is trying to impose responsibility for a certain amount of reliability and availability of these chargers through requiring these maintenance agreements. So, as I mentioned, we submitted a grant application under the community project. It might also qualify for funding under the corridor project because of the nature of Albany, some of our proposed sites sit on Highway 20. And we should find out about that grant application later this year, probably in the fall. We found out through that process that there are non-governmental organizations and others that will help you put together your project design and grant application so that you have a better chance of success. We unfortunately jumped in so late, we didn't really get to take advantage of that, so who knows how we'll do. But that help is out there. There's a lot of those entities that would like to help, and that's what they do, is try to help expand this type of infrastructure. If there's interest amongst the regional partners, what we would propose, because I can probably speak for Gary, we don't have capacity to manage this type of project. Nobody does, but we have the COG, which might be a natural partner to provide project management for this type of large regional type project. And so if we continue to get interest and positive feedback, then we would approach the COG and discuss with them if they would have capacity and interest in helping us put together this sort of regional project. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter. He sent out an email, a couple of months ago to some of his peers in the area to trying to test the waters about this. And I think most people are in the same place where they're interested, but no one has the time to do this, which is where we all are. So I don't know, Peter, if you want to add more.
No, not much. I would agree. Everybody expresses an interest, but as far as having the capability to pursue it, that's a different story. The other thing, and Chris briefly alluded to it earlier, that things are changing rapidly. If you follow the news, you saw that the Tesla connector is going to be the standard now for electric vehicles. So that's happened within the last couple of days. So if the industry is changing that fast, as you can imagine, the government, the federal government, state, local governments are struggling to keep up with that and to construct this infrastructure in a way that will take advantage of that. So the one thing that we're sure of, even though we don't know a lot of the answers, as Chris says, is that it's going to keep changing, and we'll stay abreast of it as best we can. But we do want to be if we can, be on the ground floor to try to take advantage of any assistance that we can. But that email that I sent, it got a lot of thumbs up in terms of being willing, but kind of thumbs sideways in terms of being able to help out.
So I have a question for you, Peter, regarding this EV infrastructure and going away from gas-powered cars by 2035, I think it is, or at least not selling any more new ones. The implications of gas taxes. What are we going to do? Has there any been language about per tire or per mile, or because that's going to directly impact the cities along the path?
That's a big question that goes way beyond this room. I know that Chris and I have been talking about it with our Transportation Advisory Committee, and with them, the City Council of Albany, will be resuming the discussion this summer about transportation funding for street maintenance.
Right.
And that's a huge piece of that, is what is going to replace or augment state shared revenues for gas taxes. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Mayor, what I'll say is there was a recent article discussing that issue with ODOT, and because ODOT is going to feel that pressure first and largest because they get the largest share of that revenue. And what ODOT has said publicly is that they are trying to work on that concern. It's obvious that it's going to be a problem. And they started years ago with the per mile pilot projects where you could report your mileage and get a rebate on your gas taxes, et cetera, whatever, however that worked. I'm not sure what the status is, and I don't know that they necessarily know how they're going to design road funding or street funding for the state for the future. But it's obviously something that everyone's thinking about and talking about.
I have Councilor Kopczynski, Commissioner Malone, and Commissioner Weiss.
Okay, here's an obviously naive question to ask on how this might unfold. I could it possibly envision, say, a hotel complex that wants to take advantage, build the infrastructure adjacent to their hotel, someplace that's popular or whatever, and have, 50 chargers there that people could come in and utilize the chargers, especially if there's the overnight ones or the 240 volt fast chargers. All of that can be involved as a part of a major location destination that people would start coming into. But I can't see just having a whole mass of chargers someplace that's going to pay off.
Yeah, I don't think that would be approved probably. I don't think you would get funding if that were your project design, because the intent of the corridor grant program is to provide adequate infrastructure along the corridor. So it could be that one of the partners is a hotelier, it could be that it's a large commercial developer, or it could be that it's a provider of EV charging infrastructure that works out all of these site agreements as to where they might go. So I don't think that it would be, number one, I don't think we as a group would design that project, but also it wouldn't be competitive for the federal funding if all of your stations were
Concentrated.
But if
in one space.
people are traveling now, the range of all these vehicles is increasing incrementally. And so, if you spent a night in Albany, for sake of discussion, you would have no problem going from Albany to the coast and back on one charge. Right. So it wouldn't have to have a charger station every 5 miles or anything like that.
Well, I think that and this is getting into some of the details that we haven't researched specifically on the corridor program, but I think that there are standards as far as separation between stations, because even if there were a lot of stations in Albany, if they're all full, your choice is to sit here and wait or keep driving and find the next station. So I think the intent is to create more of a network. And the other thing about the speed of the chargers, these are all details that would be worked out in design, but there are requirements for a certain number of what they call the fast chargers, which are the DC chargers, which requires a lot more electricity. So that is one of the limitations versus the level 2 chargers, which are more of an overnight charge. So all of those details would be part of the design of your project, and depending where you are, the availability of the power, et cetera, it would all get worked out in the mix.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I go to quite a few transportation meetings and see the ODOT folks. Their current budget isn't working with the gas tax. And so you mentioned the kind of pilot program that's been in the works or been in place for better part of a decade. And it has never, it is voluntary, hasn't caught on. As far as I can tell, that's the only thing that's warming up to replace the gas tax. And I'm not quite sure why it's not more visible and trying to scale up the pilot program. I know there's concerns about tracking and the government knowing that I went to the Dairy Queen and then to the laundromat. And I think that's a solvable problem where you track the mileage, but not
The actual location?
the GPS type function that I think is currently in place. And there is a long-standing truck weight mile tax, which is how the heavier trucks pay their share of transportation costs. So we have the pilot program and the trucking program that's been in place for decades. So I'm fairly sure that's in our future. And I guess I'm cut off.
No. Our computer, no, you go ahead, please
No,
finish. Please finish.
I was finished. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you. Question about the grant funds. Are those able to cover the administration or the project management fees?
That's a good question. I don't know for sure. I do know that I'm trying to think back to the grant we just submitted. It was flexible enough to cover design and community outreach as part of your grant funds. Trying to rack my brain. I don't remember if it covered project management and administration, but if the grant is 80% and the local match, which has to come from a partner, is 20%, seems like it would still, there wouldn't be any local funds expended, as far as governmental funds. But
Sure.
I'm not sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just curious because if we're talking about having the COG take it over, they'd probably want some form of payment for that.
Oh, sure, yeah. And I'm just not sure if that would be able to be reimbursed under the 80/20. That would be something we would figure out as we go.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. White and Dr. McGee?
Does it say anything in there about upkeep, like how often you have to get the charges redone? Is that included in the funding, the upkeep or the advancement of it? Or is that something you're still kind of working out in the details?
Well, there are federal standards for the chargers themselves, and there is a requirement that they have to be available and operating. I don't know the details, but it is within that first 5 year period. That's part of what your agreement has to cover is the maintenance and usability.
Okay.
I do think there is a little bit of a concern about the technology, as Peter mentioned, the actual physical connections and things seem to be evolving still. I would hope that that would be somewhat resolved by the time we get to final design on a project like this. But in any case, in the federal requirements is that you must comply with their standards for the equipment that they will pay to have installed. And since they're putting out however many billions of dollars worth of these, I would think that that would be whatever the standard is for the country.
I'm just thinking if there's, after 5 years, and it's very expensive to keep up with the maintenance, and is it going to be falling back on the cities? That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah, or does the person walk away, the private partner, how do you make sure that those chargers continue to be used and available? And that's another concern that we have about the long term of these. And it is evolving. It could be that batteries have 1,000-mile range by 5 years, and the need for the spacing might change. So it's one of those things. It's trying to figure out which is in front, the cart or the horse, like which one of these things is the cart and which one is the horse. And at this point, we just feel like we've got to get, onto the track, and we'll figure out if we're pushing the cart or pulling it as we go. But we've got to get out there, because I feel like we're missing opportunities to provide a needed infrastructure for our community, number one, and also get people to get off the I-5 and come see other parts of the state, which we all would benefit from. So that's sort of our goal here.
Thank you. Commissioner Ogerow?
Thank you. I'm assuming that the private partner could be one of these outfits that already provides chargers, like EVgo or ChargePoint, or exactly.
I think so.
And they have experience with this, and they have an incentive, if, depending on how the agreement is structured and what percent of the proceeds they get, to then maintain that infrastructure over time. So, I think about it the way filling stations evolved too. But obviously we have a big push to get the infrastructure all in, and we're not leaving it solely to the private marketplace. But
Sure.
yeah, I think that it's definitely an idea worth exploring. And if the Council of Governments is interested and willing to serve as the lead, it would be well worth talking to our Lincoln County colleagues as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the directors? Thank you very much, Director. And I'll turn it over now to our law enforcement wing. Public safety concerns in North Albany, Chief Marshall Harden and the Sheriff will be joining in that discussion as well. And Sheriff Arnarsdale. We just eye candy today.
Well, maybe he's my muscle. So actually, I'm sure that the sheriff can chime in. So good afternoon, Mayor, councilors, and commissioners. Thanks for giving me some time here. I don't have a PowerPoint because we're going to kind of be all over the place. I'm going to leave some room for questions about any concerns, particularly in North Albany. Again, Albany is your second largest city in Benton County. Sometimes the general public loses sight of that because City Hall is here in Lynn County and that, but it's a unique setup in the fact that we're in two counties. And so I serve with two sheriffs. Both of our awesome partners, and I can't compliment and be thankful for our relationship with Benton County Sheriff's Office. Many, many times, whether it be a major criminal investigation or something happening on that side of the river, we've been able to lean on each other for resources and that. And any major incident here in the Central Valley, we're all going to be there, and we've had that happen this year. Some of the issues that we're dealing with, and again, feel free to chime in at any time. I am happy to report, and I'm going to knock on some wood here, is that overall in the city of Albany, crime is fairly static this year. Violent crime's up a little bit, but considering violent crime is not a regular occurrence in the city of Albany, just a slight 1 or 2 digits one direction can change the percentage. So it's up about 3.25% for violent crime. The biggest dip, and we're trying to figure out why, and I honestly don't expect it to remain that way, is a 32% improvement or lowering in our property crime. I do not expect that to hold. We're going into our busy season. Our biggest concerning area is theft-related burglaries and thefts, and that if you didn't know, we sit down every Monday morning at 10 a.m., all the command staff, detectives, and patrol, and look at where everything's occurred in the city over the past 4-week rolling window, and so that we can allocate some attention to various areas. We also look at traffic collisions, where injury collisions are occurring, and so we go through what areas of the city need our attention in that period of time. There's an old saying in policing that you don't solve crime, you move it. So you focus on an area and it goes someplace else. And so we do our best to solve it wherever we can, but a lot of times it seems like we're chasing issues around. So as far as crime is concerned, I think we're doing fairly well. I don't have it broken out. It's going to be very similar in North Albany. North Albany tends to be our quieter area. It's mostly residential. But we can talk about some of the issues we do see there. One of which is homelessness. We don't see homeless issues or encampment issues deep into the residential areas of North Albany. We do see it along Dakina Landing and along the trails there, up as you go up along the river towards Millersburg, but on the Benton County side. And then the area, undeveloped areas in and around Hickory Station area, IGA. You'll all recall there's a fairly sizable brush fire there a couple months ago. That was an encampment where a propane tank went off. That's a concern in many of our open spaces. And so we're frequently looking at trying to manage those areas, particularly this time of year with high fire danger. One of the things we did do as a city, and you've probably read about, is that we have designated city-owned property in which to push people to for camping that will get them out of our other public spaces. And that is on the Lynn County side, and we chose that with intention because it's nearest some of our best services in the county and in the city. It's right down the street from Second Chance, which has daily food services, shower, outreach, as well as Helping Hands, which is also just down the street. We also looked at the impact on neighborhoods and the like. So that site, I haven't got an update from my code compliance officer because I've been in McMinnville all day, but we should be ready to go by the time that part of the law becomes effective, which is July 1st. And we have great partners in the area that will be there as well to offer services. Our goal always is to get people out of homelessness and into a more stable environment. But we do have this tool allowing them to camp there, and I can answer any questions about how that is set up. We have one lot for tent camping and one lot for vehicle camping. And we'll be there at least on a weekly basis with the Lynn County work crew. So there'll be people that are working off time and fines on behalf of the Sheriff's Office to do cleanup. The city is incurring costs for maintenance of the property. Some of that initial setup is being covered by ARPA funding, I believe, unless that's changed, which we were up around $35,000 just to clear the land and get it prepped. But every year or as needed, we'll have to go in and clear it, make it safe and sanitized. We also will incur a cost for a porta potty there and dumpster service. Second Chance, as long as the person is not legally restricted from going to that location, can go down to their shelter and get water and get showers and things like that. So we felt it was an ideal location. Is it going to solve the problem? Absolutely not. But it's going to be a tool for us to try to get some people out and give them a stable, safe place near resources to help them out. Any questions on homelessness? I'm going to blow through a bunch of topics.
Council, Commission?
And again, our approach is always compassionate enforcement, services first, and then take law enforcement action as needed. But go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing how you've structured that. I've been wondering, and so it's really helpful to know what your plans and intentions are.
Thank you. I never want the police department to ever take the lead on this, and because I help manage the code compliance officer, he really stepped up into this role. But if it weren't for my fellow directors, particularly Chris Bailey's crew with trucks and tractors and backhoes and stuff like that to help out. It's a community problem, and we all stepped up as directors to handle it. So appreciate that. I would say and I don't know if you want to say anything about homelessness in North Albany?
I would just concur with Taquina Landing and also with Hyack Park. My staff spends a great deal of time there, especially at night with the two locations, just because of the activity levels. And I've had 18 years with Corvallis Police Department and now 3 years here with the Sheriff's Office. And I just want to echo, we work really well together, and I really respect Marcia and the Albany Police Department. It's a great organization. And so when we have to work together, it's amazing how quickly we can pull stuff together as it relates to like the recent incident in North Albany, several recent incidents in North Albany, actually, but most recently the fire with the explosion at the homeless camp and stuff at Hyack. So I just want to reiterate that.
See, you were going to say something. So I would move on to probably our biggest challenge. It's going to be the challenge of any of our cities, and that's fentanyl. It is, I was hoping that with dollars beginning to flow for community Narcan, which is in abundance in the community now, and as far as also some local resources to aid people suffering from substance abuse, that our numbers would begin to decline, but they're absolutely skyrocketing. So for anybody who hasn't heard me say this before, 2022, the Albany Police Department in the city of Albany responded to 91 overdose calls. That was more than the previous 3 years combined. We had 11 deaths. The previous 3 years combined was 7. So the numbers aren't looking good. So far this year, actually, let me go back a little bit. In 2022, we had 72 calls where we used Narcan. So we're at June 27th. We've used Narcan on 81 calls. So we're already past 2022 numbers. We've gone to 22 overdose calls. Again, last year was 91, so we're going to blow past that, and that was a record last year. We are currently sitting at 6 deaths. Overall, APD-related responses, because we'll go just outside, if there's a call just outside the city limits in Benton County or Lynn County, we responded 100 times. So again, numbers do not look favorable. One of the things that we embarked on, since we have a regional narcotics task force, Lynn County is a HIDTA county, which is a high-intensity drug trafficking area. Any place on I-5 is. We have a regional drug task force. And a part of that, we decided to join OD Maps a little over a year and a half ago. And so all the data I just gave you gets uploaded to basically a hotspot map that is available nationwide. And so that allows public health officials, lawmakers, and that to see where people are struggling, where we're going to calls involving overdoses, and where maybe to put some resources. Sheriff Van Arsdal and I sit on a tri-county committee. I guess is a way to do it, our team, Lincoln, Lynn, and Benton counties. He has also joined OD Maps for the Benton County, which I think encompasses even the cities. So he's uploading that data as well, and very frequently. If there's a death in Benton County or a death in Corvallis, our narcotics detectives will actually go over there and try to identify the dealer involved and charge that person if we can make the case, but either federally or on a local level. We did have a successful manslaughter and negligent homicide conviction on this side of the river, where we identified the dealer who dealt a lethal dose, knew it was fentanyl, dealt a lethal dose, and both the level 1 and level 2 person are going to prison for that. We did not make a lot of headway when it came to putting a law on the books specifically for that purpose, but we'll continue in that fight. The other thing that is occurring is that we had a joint meeting probably a couple months ago, 3 months ago, with our both county health departments, both Benton County Health and Lynn County Health, and their corresponding drug and alcohol divisions, as well as the Samaritan Health System, about how we can share data, what they're seeing, what we're seeing. It's also part of this tri-county discussion, and the numbers were fairly shocking in the fact that we can share forward individuals in our community that are at high risk of overdosing. We have one gentleman that has overdosed and been brought back 6 times. And that is, I'm sorry, not a law enforcement problem. It's a community problem, and the health departments and the hospital systems have the ability to intervene because they have the services to do that. We do not. So that data sharing is out of the box thinking, and that work is continuing. It's just kind of early stages. We did go and sign up for the Narcan Leave Behind program. With so many overdose calls that we're going to, we entered into a grant program where our officers, when they use our Narcan on a subject, and they either refuse medical services moving forward, or we know it's a high-risk location, we can leave behind Narcan at those agencies. We've done that for our shelters in the past, and we've kind of done it informally for some of our homeless individuals that struggle. So that we're now officially part of that program. I don't know if you guys signed up or not, but it is a good way to kind of get that substance out there.
I would just add, recently, as a result of this Tri-County group, through my parole and probation office now, we have Narcan that we do with the Leave Behind program, and we're trying to incorporate it into the jail as well for folks that are releasing, but we know that they're going to have an issue. And the chief mentioned recently a gentleman that had been brought back numerous times. I was at that meeting, and next thing you know, he's in our facility, and we had used Narcan on him as well in our facility. So it is across both communities, and so we do work closely together.
Councilor Kopczynski?
For both of you, does Narcan work on anything other than fentanyl?
It works on any opiate.
It works on any opiate.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's
And one of the problems we're starting to see now, and you're going to start hearing, in fact, the Portland TV stations were just talking about it last night, is you're seeing that the fentanyl is very often mixed with a drug called xylazine, which is also known as Tranq. It's an animal tranquilizer that is not approved for human use. In fact, the hospitals were kind of perplexed on how to handle that when they saw it. It does not respond to Narcan. So we very well could get somebody that looks like an opiate or a fentanyl overdose and administer dose after dose after dose, and they're not coming back. And they have to be intubated and brought back and stabilized at the hospital only. So we know it's here. Our local hospital here in town has seen it. It is in the area. It also has a very similar look as MRSA, flesh eating. So it's a nasty, nasty thing. There is not a reversal out there on the market yet. The scientists are doing the best they can, but that is also killing people. There's one confirmed death just from that in the state. So the other concern is, and work that we're doing, is the Lion Task Force is very, very active in our community, schools, hospitals, churches, wherever they can get an audience. We did one here at LBCC, and they just did one in Benton County. We're trying to get the message out that whether you're a casual illegal user of marijuana, meaning they get it from a non-sanctioned commercial source, if you're thinking that you're buying meth, you think you're buying cocaine, we're seeing fentanyl show up in all of that. And we had a gentleman die down in the south end of the city who bought what he thought was cocaine. It was fentanyl and overdosed. And we worked very hard to get his body picked up by the funeral home before his kids got home from school. So, and this drug knows no socioeconomics. It's not a homeless issue. It's an everybody issue. If you take something that's not coming from a pharmacy, you have to assume that it has fentanyl in it. And I think by far that is the biggest threat to our communities because it drives crime as well. So,
Councilor Newton?
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So you touched a little bit on how things can become a community problem. I was curious for the overdoses and deaths, just because I know that mental health issues have increased and suicides have increased. I was curious if we knew, so here's a two-parter. How many of the overdoses were fentanyl related? How many of the deaths were fentanyl related? And if we know how many of those were maybe attempts for suicide or,
All great questions. I am blessed to have a great crime analysis person, Pat Hurley, who looks at he looks at every individual case. And these numbers do not include suicide intentional, as far as we know. If there's no note or no action, we may not ever know. Out of the 62 overdose calls this year, 55 of those involve fentanyl. It's almost all fentanyl or a mix, 55. In 2022, so the total year 91, 63 of those involve fentanyl. He doesn't do poly. It's too hard to tell, but I would tell you that the numbers say fentanyl is involved in almost all of these overdose deaths. We have not seen a heroin overdose, I think, since I got here. Wow. So.
And I would just say I have Jamie Glass in my office, and Jamie's amazing. I can't see you with these glasses. I just want Marcia to feel better, so I put them on. But we have had 60 so far in Benton County, 60 overdoses this year with 3 deaths, and 21 are straight fentanyl. Again, we don't do the poly, and poly drug use is multiple drugs. So we don't have the poly breakdown, but 21 are specifically fentanyl.
So Chief, what was our deceased last year?
For 2022, all of last year's 11, we're at 6 currently for this year, year to date. Year to date as of 2 days ago.
We're at 60.
Wow. Anyone else from the commission or board would like to say something?
My understanding, I just left a meeting with the Chiefs Association early today that there are enhancements, criminal enhancements for fentanyl that just were signed by the governor. So we're trying to figure out what that means. It's a whole reversal of everything we've done for the last couple of years. So we're waiting for our legal teams to tell us exactly what that looks like. But that is good news. That's a step in the right direction.
Wow. Very sobering.
Yes, absolutely. I'll talk about some good news. I'm pleased to report for at least 2 more days, the Albany Police Department has 0 police officer vacancies. That's the lowest number of vacancies in a number of years, according to people who have been here for a long time. In 2021, we went as high as 15 vacancies. Out of 65 sworn, that's not a good number to have. We've worked really hard to build a very good culture surrounded around wellness, hiring people that are both well-versed in emotional intelligence and critical thinking. And other than Ken Fandrum, who most of you will, if you know Ken, he's been around here for decades. He retires on Friday. That will put us back 1, and then we'll actually go up 1 more because City Council passed a budget that allowed me to add 1 more officer. So, but we already had a recruitment in place. I have a fantastic boss who allows me to overhire. So we've been working on that, knowing that those vacancies are coming, and we do not anticipate anybody else leaving or retiring until April of 2024, which is a good thing for a PD at the moment.
Chief, you better explain what overhire means for my bosses.
So overhire allows, typically HR does not allow you to open and post a position unless you have a vacancy already on the books. We knew that they were coming, and we had the budget because we had shortages for so long. I had a surplus in my budget, which allowed us to be able to overhire. I also overpromote. So when I have a sergeant or somebody who's being freshly promoted, I try to overpromote them or promote them a little earlier for the outgoing person to pass off that institutional knowledge that has served us very well because we've got people leaving with 25 and 30 years experience. And I just don't want them to walk out the door without being able to pass that on to somebody else that's replacing them. So my budget allowed for it, and the HR director and I went both to the city manager and said, you okay if we spend this money early? This is a little atypical for hiring practices in government. So that's what overhiring is.
Thank you for that explanation. Is there anything else? Please, Sheriff.
I like the idea of overhiring. Just saying.
I think that message wasn't for us.
Heard it. I heard it.
As a part of our strategies to deal with some of our issues across the city, Again, I have great partners both externally and internally. Last year, or in the last budget, I entered a cost-sharing agreement with our Parks Director to add a 50-50 split and hired a park ranger. Works within the police department under the Albany Police Association, but her whole job is a community service type job related to our parks. So she'll deal with safety and special events in parks, as well as any issues surrounding homelessness and other safety concerns. And not only that, we stole her from a city to the north, and she's well-versed in code compliance related issues, and she's been an awesome add to the department. The other add we did, again, thank you to our council, was the addition of a municipal mental health intervention specialist. So in the past, our department has had a shared partnership with our county mental health providers. So Lynn County Mental Health, in this case, had provided us with an embedded county employee to work with our patrol resources to do crisis outreach and response. The need was so great here in the city, as well as being underserved in other parts of Lynn County, that we floated the idea of adding a municipal employee in that same role that allowed the county to take back their full-time position and place it elsewhere where needed in Lynn County. So we added a full-time position, stole that previous county employee from the county. We're good at stealing people. So, and we started that position using 3 years of salary benefit coverage using ARPA money. ARPA money has a specific call out, and I appreciate my finance director for pointing this out, for those funds to be used for mental health services. So it's a startup money for that. If it's successful, and I think it already has been enormously successful, that we would look to enter into a 4-way partnership with library, parks, fire, and police to keep that that position within the city. I will already tell you, and I reported out to our city council a short time ago, that this person is already at full capacity. And so if all goes well, you might see me in front of you asking for a second position, because we could certainly use it. She only works 40 hours a week, and obviously people in crisis, it's all days and all times. So those are some of the innovative ways that we've tried to tackle some of the issues within the city. We do also work very closely with our partners in both of those counties, both Lynn County and Benton County, to have overlap services. They communicate well, they work well, and the like. Do you have anything to say on those?
Work group we sit on. It's made up of folks from both Lynn County, Benton County, City of Albany, Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. It's a really a large group of folks. So we make sure that we're all, because we all deal with the same people, and so it just makes sense that we're all. And really, Joanne Miller with Good Samaritan kind of spearheads that group, and she's been amazing to work with. So.
Continuing on some future projects, we're currently in the research phase of expanding our photo enforcement presence, photo radar, red light tickets here in the city. In July, we'll be doing some traffic studies at some locations surrounding our schools. North Albany Road is one, near North Albany Middle School and North Albany Elementary School, and then look at a future expansion of that. If I don't go a week without a traffic complaint in the city, it's an interesting week. I have 2 traffic positions that I still need to fill. Those aren't vacancies. On paper, I'm fully staffed, but I have about 7 people in various levels of training. And until a couple of them are ready, I can't start filling those traffic positions. And I certainly can't embark on a photo enforcement adventure without staff, because a human being has to touch each and every citation that comes in. And so we're looking at some locations, focusing on school zone locations, and there's certain rules the state legislature just released any jurisdiction in the state of Oregon to embark on this. So we were one of the original cities that were allowed to do it, but now any city in Oregon, and we're starting to get a bunch of calls on how that's worked. So that's coming. We hope to have that up and running with council blessing and the city manager's blessing sometime in 2024. And other technology, if you were at our Pride event on Saturday, you saw a beautiful trailer here, just out here at 3rd and Robin. That was a Homeland Security grant that our emergency manager for Albany Fire Department helped us submit. It is a regional resource. So any large special event, whether it be the Benton County Fair or anything else, it's a fantastic tool to be able to kind of keep an eye on a large crowd event, which are always favorable targets for bad people. And part of us getting that grant was that it's a regional resource. It worked wonderfully for the event on Saturday, and so we can be contacted for usage on that. Jeff knows where to find that. And then finally, one of the things that makes me very proud is that there's 3 agencies in the state of Oregon that are internationally accredited: Corvallis, Washington County, and the Albany Police Department. And we just, in the last 2 weeks, finished our reaccreditation process with an on-site assessor. Some of our mayor and city manager and other department directors met with him. He has given us the thumbs up for reaccreditation. It's not an easy thing to go through. It's about 400 standards that we have to meet. And he left us with huge accolades and said that I think I told Peter, whatever we're doing, we should bottle it and sell it. So I'm very proud of the police department. It's not just me. I just set the tone, and they do all the good work. So you should be very proud that you have a municipal police department. You have all great police departments. All of us are. I can say that comfortably, but you have a great one here in Albany. I'll answer any other questions you have.
Council, Commission, Councilor Kopsinski, Commissioner Weiss afterwards.
This is just a tangential question to the comments you've been making. A fair amount of time ago, the city of Albany authorized porta potties in private locations. Has there been any instances of any trouble of any kind whatsoever that you're aware of since we've had those allowed?
Not that I'm aware of. We're in the eve of 4th of July, and fireworks and porta potties are always go well together, as they like to blow them up. But I can't rule it out, but we have not had a barrage of porta potty issues.
Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss.
I just want to go back to your park ranger. Is that a sworn officer position?
No, we basically designed it after a community service officer role. Very, very similar in how it looks in the union and that. So they have a limited commission under the AMC to write citations and things like that.
Any other commissioner, council? Okay. Well, that brings us to closing remarks. First of all, thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Chief, for your report out this afternoon. Very enlightening. Congratulations on the CLIA certification, and also congratulations on overhiring. We like that a lot. I do, anyway. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Malone, as the board chair for the Board of Commissioners for Benton County, do you have any remarks?
Certainly. I think this is a good idea that we put into practice. We share North Albany and kind of law enforcement issues. Just because there's a river in between our counties doesn't mean that we need to share good ideas, and started off talking about transportation, and that's got to be continuous. And I really appreciate the Tri-County EV charging idea. I know it's the people that are funding projects like local organizations to cooperate and kind of get their act together before applying, especially when you're talking about millions of dollars, that it's good for all of us to have kind of regional scale efforts, and glad to hear about that one. My next meeting with the COG, I'll see if they know about this, that they may be in line for oversight. But just appreciate the effort, and we have common problems, and see what the other agency is doing, and just see that we can foster more cooperation and get to know each other a little bit better. So I think this was a good idea, and I'm glad we put it into practice.
So thank you very much, Commissioner. I would like to have Peter Trotzen, our city manager, and Suzanne Hoffman, our county administrator. You have any statements, comments?
Thanks, Mayor. I think you can tell that the staff of the city and the staff of the county enjoy a very solid working relationship. So we're grateful for that. And emblematic of that is the relationship. I wanted to call out Chris Bailey and Gary Stockhoff. So they didn't mention, although I think when they stole a glance at each other, they were thinking of the Dumbeck Water District. So and that passed largely unnoticed. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank them publicly for what they did to transfer the customers of the Dumbeck Water District, which is now defunct and was headed that way, to being customers of the Albany Municipal Water System, which basically made sure that 120 customers, 120 households or thereabouts had continued to have safe drinking water. So, on the face of it, it sounds like a small and simple matter, but once you delved into the legal aspects of it and the technical aspects of it, it was anything but. So I'm very grateful for them collaborating in that way to make that happen. It was August 18th of 2015 when the two bodies last met together. So that was almost 8 years ago, and a lot has happened since 2015, but judging by Commissioner Malone's comments, if this is helpful to you, we'll ensure that we not let another 8 years pass before we put something like this together again. And I wanted to thank Maura Kwiatkowski and Mary Dibble of our staff for helping to pretty much to put all of this together. I also wanted to wish the commissioners good luck with their selection of a county administrator. I know you have a meet and greet tomorrow. And Suzanne, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say, but over to you or the mayor.
Can you hear me? Oh, great. Thank you. I'll echo Peter's comments. Really appreciate your hosting us today. And as Peter indicated, we're moving full speed ahead with the process to find the next Benton County administrator. As you know, Joe Kirby departed in March, and I'm just filling in for a short time and assisting with the process, the selection process for the next county administrator. So I'm really glad that during my short time in this role, I had the honor of joining you all here today. I was born and raised in Albany, so it was nice to come and see your beautiful, new to me anyway, City Hall. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for making those comments, both Peter and Suzanne. In closing, I just want to say one of the things I say on a daily basis in my business and in my life is that we must be better together. And I think the relationship and partnership with Benton County has been great for me as a city councilor and as a mayor. But I want to take my hat off to Commissioner Zan Ogerow, because she's been my liaison over the last few years. And having those coffee meetings and having those lunches has been great, because it gave me a chance to understand what's going on across the river and also happening within city limits I share with her. I think the collaboration is great. I've pushed for this meeting with Glenn County and Benton County, and I'm happy that it is happening. I think this has been great for all of us to learn from each other. But I want to just give my sincere thank you to the staff for working on this, Mary, and I can't remember your counterpart's name, but thank you very much. And I hope we do this again, whether it be 1 year from now, or it won't be 8 years from now, because I won't be here. But it is a pleasure and a joy to have you all with us tonight. And thank you very much. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.